The events take place in May 1944, during World War II. A Japanese trader named Saito is transported with other prisoners back to his homeland, where they will be forced into slave labor. Saito is held in solitary confinement until two guards escort him to the ship's commander. Inside the cabin, the officer glares with contempt, declaring that betraying one's country is unforgivable and even the death penalty would be too light a punishment. Shortly after, more soldiers arrive, bringing in British prisoner Bronson, whose hatred for the Japanese is immediately evident. The commander delivers his grim decision. The two men will be chained together for the rest of their lives. Soldiers fasten shackles around their ankles. Bronson resists fiercely but is quickly overpowered. With no choice, the men are bound to each other. Just when it seems this will be their fate, an enemy attack strikes the vessel and the prisoners revolt. Amid the chaos, Bronson and Saito fight the soldiers. A submarine appears and launches a missile toward the ship. In the cabin, only the officer and the two prisoners remain. The officer raises his gun to execute them, but Bronson grabs Saito, and they leap into the open sea just before the explosion. Hours later, Bronson, barely conscious, swims while carrying Saito to a deserted island, collapsing on the shore. At dawn, Saito wakes, hoping it was all a dream, until he sees the shackle still binding him to Bronson. He tries to wake the Brit, but the man doesn't respond. Nearby lies the corpse of a soldier. Saito crawls to retrieve his weapon, but as he contemplates using it, Bronson suddenly regains consciousness and attacks. The two wrestle violently at the water's edge, unaware that something sinister moves beneath the waves. Bronson forces Saito toward the sea, trying to drown him. Blood from Saito's injured leg attracts a mysterious creature, which seizes Bronson and drags him under. The attacker slashes with sharp claws. Saito takes aim, but instead of shooting Bronson, he fires at the creature, forcing it to retreat. Wounded and shaken, the men realize there is a threat far greater than their hatred. They agree to a truce. Bronson asks what it was, but Saito's silence and the look on his face shows he knows. Later, Saito attempts suicide, but Bronson stops him, taking the last bullet from the gun and giving it to him, suggesting they save it for the monster. They scour the shoreline for supplies, finding a few washed-up items. Bronson discovers a pack of cigarettes and offers one to Saito, who declines, staring into the distance with a hopeless expression. While searching through the wreckage for anything useful, Bronson finds the body of a young companion. Shaken, he laments that the boy had his whole life ahead, a life that wouldn't have ended if Saito's country hadn't started the war. Though Saito doesn't understand the words, he recognizes the grief and quietly offers Bronson some water. Bronson accepts, and together they gather more supplies for the night. When darkness falls, they set up a makeshift camp. Bronson tries to put on his boot but struggles against the chains. Saito recalls taking larger boots from a dead comrade and offers one, but Bronson refuses to wear anything tied to Japan. Later, Saito cooks crabs and offers one to his reluctant companion. Starving after days without food, Bronson accepts but drops it in the sand. Without hesitation, Saito gives him his own portion. Bronson initially refuses, but Saito insists, leaving it beside him. Bronson finally eats and admits it tastes good. The tension between them begins to fade. Bronson formally introduces himself. Saito repeats his name and responds with his own. Bronson asks about the chains, but Saito says nothing. Later, Bronson crafts a crude tool to break them. His first attempts fail, until Saito points to a weaker section near his ankle, saying something in Japanese. Bronson doesn't understand, but follows the gesture. With 2 strikes, the link loosens, and both cheer. Now it's Bronson's turn. Saito asks for the tool. Bronson hesitates but hands it over. Joking about Bronson looking away, Saito frees him with a single blow. Relieved, Bronson celebrates loudly until the noise draws something lurking nearby. Sensing danger, they arm themselves, but the creature slips away. Searching for clues, Saito spots tracks in the sand but is interrupted by a voice. Two Japanese soldiers appear, escorting a prisoner. Bronson suspects betrayal, but Saito hands him his machete as a sign of trust and tells him to hide. One soldier smells food at their camp and investigates, finding someone seemingly asleep. Saito steps forward, asking them not to shoot, while Bronson watches. Unaware Saito is a traitor. They trust him. Distracted, Bronson doesn't notice danger creeping up behind him. Meanwhile, Saito asks his former comrade if anyone else survived. The soldier replies that only those with life vests escaped. The rest drowned. At that moment, Bronson realizes the sea creature is right behind him. Frozen with fear, he shuts his eyes, and when he opens them, the monster is gone. A soldier scans the area and pointedly asks if Saito is truly alone on the island. Saito says he is, but the men have already noticed signs of another presence. One soldier rises with a katana, recalling a rumor from before the shipwreck about a traitor and an enemy chained together. He pulls away the cloth on Saito's foot, revealing the shackle mark. He remarks that in such cases the accused often take their own lives, but this one was different. The other soldier demands to know where the fugitive is. Saito insists Bronson is dead, pointing to a grave where they buried the young companion Bronson had lost. The Japanese soldier calls him both a traitor and a liar, raising his blade to strike. Before he can, a deep roar echoes across the island. Everyone freezes. The other prisoner panics, muttering about a tribe of fishmen, and drops to his knees to pray. One soldier orders the youngest to investigate. He comes across Bronson, who steps on a twig. The soldier heads toward the sound, but another growl makes him turn away, sparing Bronson. The patrol continues until the soldier reaches a cave. Not seeing the monster camouflaged among the rocks, he ventures inside. Bronson uses the distraction to move toward Saito. Inside, the creature appears behind the soldier, who turns and thrusts his weapon, but the beast tears off his arm. His scream echoes through the jungle. Outside, the remaining soldier, thinking Saito is to blame, moves to kill him, but Bronson strikes first, fatally wounding him. As Bronson aims to finish the job, the creature appears and hurls the severed head at them with a chilling roar. They flee as the fishman kills the wounded man. The prisoner tries to run but is overtaken and slaughtered. Bronson and Saito, watching from hiding, realize they must escape. The monster spots them and gives chase. They sprint through dense foliage, Saito cutting a path. Bronson yells he has a plan, but Saito doesn't understand and keeps moving. Bronson stumbles. The creature reaches him. He fires but misses, his last bullet gone. The fishman grabs him by the neck, claws raised. Saito suddenly returns, attacking the beast and forcing it to drop Bronson. They run, but lose their footing on a slope and tumble to the bottom, unconscious. By morning, both are badly injured. Saito wakes to find a branch lodged in his chest and painfully pulls it free. Nearby, Bronson lies on a rotting log at the edge of a waterfall. As he shifts, the log gives way. He strikes a rock on the way down, plunges into the water, and with fragments of the first attack flashing in his mind, struggles to swim ashore. Saito discovers the katana of a fallen soldier. Now separated, the two men follow different paths along the river. At the top of a waterfall, the fishman releases a deafening roar that echoes through the forest, reaching both. Alerted, Saito, crouched and drinking from the river, stops and decides to search for his friend. Bronson continues alone until he faces a massive waterfall blocking his way. Determined, he begins climbing the slick rock. Saito moves away from the river but still hasn't found him. After crossing, Bronson pauses to rest but hears faint noises. Saito, deep in the forest, hears them too and tenses. Bronson sits at the water's edge to catch his breath, only to sense a presence beside him. Turning, he finds himself face to face with a massive crocodile. With no escape, he remains still. The reptile studies him, then slips back into the water. Shaken, Bronson presses on, nearing the top of the waterfall. There he sees the creature tending to the wound Saito inflicted earlier and realizes it's far more intelligent than they thought. He tries to retreat quietly but makes a noise and crouches to avoid detection. From hiding, he watches as the monster approaches the river only to be ambushed by the same crocodile. The water churns red, the reptile floats briefly, and then the fishman resurfaces, tearing it in half. Horrified, Bronson freezes as it roars again, a sound Saito hears from afar. Bronson flees. Meanwhile, Saito finds a man's corpse tied to a tree. Startled, he stumbles into a hidden pit, discovering the severed head of another fishman. Studying the grisly trophy, he realizes the creature can be killed. Searching the body, he finds a firearm in its hand and shell casings on the ground, deducing this man had killed the other monster. Now armed with a katana and pistol, Saito sets out to hunt. On the way, he discovers the wreckage of a partially submerged plane. Entering the fuselage, he spots something inside. Elsewhere, Bronson finds a piece of the broken fuselage and soon reaches the same wreck. Before entering, he fashions a makeshift spear from scrap metal. Inside, Bronson searches debris, finding a flare gun, lighter, cigarettes, and other items, but something else catches his attention. Reaching for it, he slips, noticing an object lodged in the wing. It's a bomb and an idea forms. Resting, he lights a cigarette but hears footsteps approaching. Turning, he sees Saito. Bronson notices Saito trembling and offers him a cigarette. Saito refuses, insisting he must show him something. Unable to understand, Bronson watches as Saito flicks open his lighter, gesturing for him to follow. They head to a cave where Saito points out something unusual, the creature guarding an egg. Bronson steps closer, but Saito warns it's a female, fiercely territorial. Bronson refuses to leave without killing it. Saito cautions that doing so will enrage the male. Bronson insists it's them or her. He reveals the bomb he found earlier and asks Saito to help carry it to the nest. With effort, they haul it back. There, they find the trigger bent. Bronson works to fix it as Saito urges him to leave. Meanwhile, the creature nears the nest. Bronson recalls an emergency axe in the plane and says someone must stay behind to trigger the bomb. Saito, heavy-hearted, admits they're in this mess because of him and volunteers. Their talk is cut short by the creature's growl. They rush outside. Bronson lights a flare while Saito stands guard. Bronson struggles to free the axe from the plane's frame. The fishman appears charging at Saito. They clash in a fierce fight. The monster deflects each blow. Bronson finally frees the axe and joins in. Saito drives the beast toward the plane, giving Bronson a chance to strike repeatedly. They corner it, but as the flare fades, the creature vanishes. They race back to the cave. Saito guards the entrance while Bronson fixes the bomb's latch. Just as it clicks, the monster lunges from behind. Saito stabs it in the chest, raising his weapon to sever its head, but the beast hurls him into the wall and turns on Bronson, slashing his chest in a vicious counterattack. Seeing Bronson in the creature's grasp, Saito summons his remaining strength, rises, grabs his pistol, and fires the bullet piercing the monster's eye. It releases Bronson. Saito fires again but misses, then shifts aim to the egg, shattering it. The hatchling falls lifeless, and the enraged creature charges. Saito rushes to Bronson, but his friend is gravely wounded. Bronson hands over his belongings, urging Saito to go. Reluctantly, Saito leaves the cave as the creature cradles its young. Moments later, it advances toward Bronson, who triggers the bomb. Counting down, he reaches 3. Nothing happens. Remembering Saito's words about breaking the chain, he forces the mechanism, activating the bomb. A massive explosion tears through the cave as Saito watches in anguish from outside. He turns to leave, mourning his friend, but a chilling roar freezes him. The monster survived. Saito bolts into the jungle with the fishman in pursuit. Reaching the beach, he drops to his knees in despair, then remembers Bronson's bravery, turning fear into fury. The creature charges at the kneeling figure, only to fall into a trap. Saito bursts from the sand, attacking ferociously. Blades clash against scales, both wounded in the struggle. Saito dodges a lunge and slashes the beast's abdomen, bringing it down. Standing over it, he raises his blade for the kill but drives it into the sand instead. He grabs a flare, but sounds from the forest hint at more threats. At the shore, he tries to ignite it, only to find it broken. Exhausted, he collapses on the sand as smoke from the earlier explosion drifts upward. Hours later, Saito wakes aboard an American ship, facing an officer and a Japanese translator. Asked if Bronson helped him, he stays silent. Pressed about his crime, he says he killed his commander, unable to watch his comrades die under senseless orders. When asked about Bronson, Saito recalls their shared moments, quietly admitting they became friends. Questioned if anyone else is alive on the island, he answers, "No one." As the ship sails away, his gaze lingers on the horizon where many creatures still remain.